Now let's begin. The morning sun cut through the kitchen window as Gregory Decker poured coffee into his thermos. Owen sat at the table, methodically working through his bowl of cereal, his backpack slumped against the chair leg. The strap had torn yesterday during soccer practice, hanging by a few stubborn threads. "Dad, can you fix it?" Owen had asked, those earnest brown eyes looking up at him with complete trust. "I'll take it to Morris's shop. He'll have it good as new," Gregory had promised. Now, standing in his kitchen on what seemed like any other Thursday morning, Gregory had no idea that promise would save his son's life. His wife Marla breezed through the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something the person on the other end said. She'd been on her phone constantly lately, always stepping into the other room for her calls. Gregory had noticed, but pushed the thoughts away. She ran a successful real estate business. Of course she was busy. "I've got showings all afternoon," she said, ending her call. She kissed Owen's head absently. "Don't forget your orthodontist appointment tomorrow." "Mom, my backpack's being fixed, remember? Use your old one from the closet." She grabbed her keys, barely glancing at Gregory. "I'll be home late. There's leftover chicken in the fridge." The door closed behind her, and Gregory felt that familiar distance he'd been trying to ignore for months. They'd been married 10 years, together for 12. Somewhere along the way, Marla had drifted into a life that seemed to exist just outside his periphery. "Come on, buddy," Gregory said, ruffling Owen's hair. "Let's get you to school, and I'll drop your pack at Morris's before work." Maurice Edwards had been repairing shoes and leather goods in their small Connecticut town for 43 years. His shop sat wedged between a bakery and a hardware store on Main Street, the kind of place that smelled like oil and old leather and honest work. Gregory had known him since childhood. Maurice had resold his father's work boots every year, had repaired Gregory's first baseball glove, had even fixed Marla's designer purse when the handle broke 3 years ago. The old man looked up from his workbench when Gregory entered, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "Gregory Decker, that boy of yours finally wore through another strap. Soccer cleats caught it during practice. Think you can work your magic?" Maurice took the backpack, examining it with practiced eyes. "Quality's not what it used to be. I'll reinforce the whole thing while I'm at it. Give me till tomorrow." Gregory headed to his job site, a new community center he was designing as the lead architect for Morrison & Associates. The work absorbed him, reviewing structural calculations, consulting with contractors, solving problems. Architecture had always been his refuge, the place where logic and creativity merged into something tangible and true. His phone buzzed around too, Morris's number. "Gregory, you need to come to the shop. Now." Something in the old man's voice made Gregory's stomach clench. "What's wrong? Just come. Don't tell anyone where you're going." The drive back to Main Street took 12 minutes that felt like hours. Maurice was waiting, the closed sign already flipped despite it being mid-afternoon. He locked the door behind Gregory and led him to the back room. Owen's backpack lay on the workbench, completely disassembled. Morris's hands shook slightly as he pointed to a section of the lining. "I found this when I was replacing the strap. There's a hidden pocket sewn into the lining. Very clever work. You'd never notice it unless you knew what to look for." Gregory's mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" Maurice picked up a small black device, no bigger than a USB drive. This was inside. "It's a digital voice recorder." "Gregory, I'm sorry, but I listened to what was on it. I had to make sure." "Make sure of what?" The old man's eyes held a deep sadness. "Sit down, son. You need to hear this." Maurice pressed play. The voices that emerged were crystal clear. Marla's laugh, one Gregory knew intimately, followed by a man's deeper voice he didn't recognize. "The camping trip is perfect," the man said. "Memorial Day weekend, Blackstone Lake. Plenty of witnesses will see them arrive Friday evening. And Saturday night." That was Marla, but her voice carried a cold calculation Gregory had never heard before. "The canoe accident happened Saturday night. Father and son go out for a sunset paddle. Neither one can swim very well, correct?" Gregory's terrified of deep water. Has been since he was a kid. Hearing her discuss his childhood fear with such casual cruelty made Gregory's vision blur. He gripped the edge of the workbench. "They'll find the canoe capsized Sunday morning," the man continued. "Tragic accident. Happens every year on that lake. Chief Morse will handle the investigation personally. Rule it accidental drowning within 48 hours. And then, Then we wait a respectful 6 months. You play the grieving widow beautifully, I'm sure. After that, we can move forward with our plans for Owen. Gregory's blood turned to ice. Plans for Owen? Maurice fast-forwarded. Marla's voice again. You're sure he'll bring the price you quoted? He's only 9. Healthy, intelligent, blonde hair, blue eyes. The Wexlers are already offering $300,000. They'll take him within a week of the paperwork being finalized. Jesus Christ. Gregory stumbled backward, catching himself against the wall. She's going to sell our son? Maurice stopped the recording. There's more. Hours of it. This man calls himself Charles. He runs some kind of operation. This isn't the first time they've done this. There are other names, other families. I need to call the police. The police chief isn't on it. You heard them say his name. Randolph Morse. Gregory's mind raced, an architect's brain trying to process a structure that defied all logic. His wife, the woman he'd loved since college, the mother of his child, was planning to murder him and sell their son. When did Owen get this recorder? I don't know, but whoever planted it in his bag saved both your lives. Gregory sank into a chair, his hands trembling. What do I do? Maurice sat across from him, his old eyes sharp with urgency. You take your son and you leave this town. Right now? Don't go home. Don't pack bags. Don't tell Marla anything. You disappear. I can't just. Yes, you can. Gregory, listen to me. These people have money, power, and they've done this before. If you confront Marla, if you go to the local police, you and Owen will be dead within a day. You need to run first, plan later. Every fiber of Gregory's being wanted to reject this nightmare, to believe there was some mistake. But Marla's voice on that recording was unmistakable. The casual way she discussed his drowning, discussed selling Owen like livestock, it was real. I can copy this recording, Maurice said quietly. You'll need evidence. But you need to move fast. It's 2:15. School lets out at 3:30. Can you get Owen and be gone before Marla knows? Gregory looked at this old man who'd known his family for decades, who'd fixed his father's boots and his son's backpack, who was risking everything to warn him. Why are you helping me? Morris's expression hardened. Because I had a daughter once. Sarah. She disappeared 23 years ago from a town 3 hours north of here. Police said she ran away, but I never believed it. She was only 7. His voice broke. If someone had warned me, if I'd known what I know now about how these monsters operate, I'd have taken her and run. I'm giving you the chance I never had. Gregory stood, decision crystallizing like steel in his spine. Copy that recording. Give me every file on it. While Maurice worked, Gregory's mind shifted into the systematic problem-solving mode that made him excellent at his job. This was just another project, another set of challenges to overcome. Except the stakes weren't a building's foundation, they were his son's life. Maurice handed him 3 USB drives. Copies. Keep them separate. One in your shoe, one somewhere on your person, one hidden in your car. Thank you. Gregory gripped the old man's shoulder. I won't forget this. Just keep that boy safe. And Gregory, whatever you do next, be smart. These people are connected, ruthless. You'll need to think 3 steps ahead of them. Gregory checked his watch, 2:47. He had 43 minutes. Gregory parked across from Riverview Elementary at 3:15, watching parents gather for pickup. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his hands were steady on the wheel. He'd made 3 stops, an ATM for the daily maximum cash withdrawal, a convenience store for a prepaid phone, and a gas station to fill the tank. The bell rang at 3:28. Children poured from the building like a breaking dam. Gregory spotted Owen's blonde head in the crowd, his son laughing with another boy. So innocent, so unaware that his mother had priced his life at $300,000. Owen's face lit up when he saw Gregory's car. Dad, I thought Mom was picking me up today. Change of plans, buddy. Hop in. Once they were moving, Gregory kept his voice casual. How do you feel about an adventure? What kind of adventure? The kind where we drive somewhere new? Just you and me. Like a road trip. Owen's eyes widened with excitement. Really? Where are we going? It's a surprise. But we need to leave right now. Don't I need to pack? And what about Mom? We'll get everything we need on the way. And I'll text Mom once we're on the road. This is going to be fun, Owen. Trust me. His son settled back in his seat, already chattering about whether they'd see mountains or the ocean. Gregory drove the speed limit, took no shortcuts, did nothing to attract attention. In the rearview mirror, Their Connecticut town grew smaller and smaller. His phone buzzed at 4:17. Marla. He ignored it. It buzzed again at 4:23, for 31, for 45. Each call felt like a hammer blow, but he didn't answer. At 5:02, a text. Where are you? I'm home and you're not here. Call me. Gregory pulled off at a rest stop outside Hartford, 90 minutes from home. While Owen used the bathroom, Gregory typed a single message. Needed to clear my head. Taking Owen camping for a few days. Don't worry. He powered off his phone and threw it in a trash can. Then he bought a road atlas from the rest stop, the old-fashioned kind that didn't require satellites or cell towers to work. Dad. Owen appeared at his elbow. Are you okay? You seem weird. Gregory knelt down, eye level with his son. I need you to be brave, Owen. We're going to be gone for longer than a few days. We're going to start a new adventure in a new place. What about school? And Mom? We'll figure all that out. But right now, I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that? Owen searched his father's face with those perceptive eyes that missed nothing. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Okay, Dad. I trust you. They drove through the night, Gregory pushing further and further from everything they'd known. He thought about Marla discovering his message, about her calling Charles, about them realizing their plan had fallen apart. Would they come after him? Probably. Maurice was right. He needed to think 3 steps ahead. Around midnight, with Owen asleep in the passenger seat, Gregory's mind finally caught up with his body. The shock gave way to grief, crushing and complete. His marriage had been a lie. The woman he'd loved had been planning his murder. She'd looked at their son and seen dollar signs. He pulled into a roadside motel outside Scranton, Pennsylvania, and sat in the dark parking lot, tears streaming down his face. 10 years of marriage erased. A life built together, revealed as a foundation of sand. But Owen was real. Owen was worth saving. Gregory wiped his eyes and carried his sleeping son into the motel room. Tomorrow, he'd start planning their next move. Tonight, he'd stand guard over the only thing that mattered. As he sat in the dark, watching Owen sleep, Gregory made himself a promise. Marla and Charles and everyone involved in this nightmare would pay for what they'd tried to do. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. He'd make sure of it. He'd been an architect his entire adult life, building structures that lasted, solving complex problems through careful planning and precision. Now he'd apply those same skills to a different kind of project, the complete and total destruction of everyone who'd threatened his son. But first, they needed to disappear. 6 months later, Gregory sat in a diner outside Richmond, Virginia, scanning the online news from his former hometown. The article's headline made his jaw tighten. Memorial service held for father and son lost in tragic accident. His staged death had worked perfectly. 3 days after fleeing, he'd driven Owen to a bridge over the Delaware River, explaining what they had to do. They'd weighted down Gregory's old phone in the car, sent it over the bridge at 2 a.m., and walked away into new lives. Bodies were never recovered. The river was deep and the current strong. The investigation, led by Police Chief Randolph Morse, had concluded within a week. Gregory Decker, distraught and unstable, had driven himself and his 9-year-old son off a bridge. Tragic. Senseless. The memorial service photo showed Marla in elegant black, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Charles Sellers stood beside her, a proprietary hand on her shoulder. The caption identified him as close family friend providing support during this difficult time. Gregory's burner phone buzzed. A text from Jesse LeBlanc, his friend from college who'd become a private investigator in North Carolina. Got the info you wanted. You need to see this in person. They'd relocated to Richmond under new names. Martin Daly for Gregory, Jason Daly for Owen. Gregory worked as a freelance architect using an assumed identity and a fake portfolio. It wasn't perfect, but it paid cash and kept them afloat while he planned. Owen attended school as Jason, adapting with the resilience of childhood. He knew something terrible had happened with his mother, though Gregory had shielded him from the full truth. She made some very bad choices, was all Gregory had said. We had to leave to stay safe. Now, Gregory drove 2 hours to meet Jesse at a barbecue joint off I-85. His friend looked exactly the same. Buzz-cut hair, sharp eyes, the bearing of someone who'd spent 8 years in military intelligence before going private. Martin Daly, Jesse said with a slight smile, using the new name. Good to see you breathing. Thanks for meeting. They took a corner booth. Jesse slid a manila folder across the table. Charles Sellers, age 46. Runs Sellers Family Services, an adoption agency licensed in Connecticut and Massachusetts. On the surface, completely legitimate. Dozens of successful adoptions, glowing reviews. And below the surface? I spent 3 months digging. Charles has placed 63 children in the last 8 years. 41 were standard adoptions, everything legal and clean. But 22. Jesse's expression darkened. Those files smell wrong. Parents died in accidents. Children entered the system. Charles fast-tracked private adoptions to couples who paid premium fees, way above market rate. Gregory's hands clenched around his coffee mug. He's been doing this for 8 years? At least. I found 3 more cases before that. Different names, different states. Charles has been in the child trafficking business for over a decade. He moves every few years, changes the agency name, keeps the operation small enough to avoid federal scrutiny. And Marla? Jesse pulled out another set of documents. She got involved with him 14 months ago. Started as an affair. They weren't careful. Lots of hotel records. But then the relationship changed. I found encrypted emails between them discussing prospects. Your wife was helping him identify targets. The words hit like physical blows. 14 months ago, Marla had helped close on a house for a family new to town, the Harringtons. Their daughter, a 6-year-old named Emma, had been adorable, blonde, bright. The family died in a house fire 4 months later. Emma was adopted by a couple in Boston through Sellers Family Services. How many families did she help him target? At least 4 that I can confirm. Probably more. Gregory stared at his son's name in the folder. Owen Decker, age 9, preliminary assessment, high-value placement. The Wexlers, a childless couple in Manhattan, had been prepared to pay $300,000 for him. There's something else, Jesse said quietly. Charles has a partner handling enforcement and cleanup. Police Chief Randolph Morse. He's been covering up suspicious deaths, falsifying reports, intimidating anyone who asks questions. He's in deep. How do we prove it? That's the problem. They're careful. Everything's compartmentalized. The couples who adopt these children have no idea they're buying stolen kids. They think they're paying high fees for expedited service. The paper trail is buried under layers of legitimate business. And with Morse controlling local law enforcement, there's no one to investigate. Gregory absorbed this, his architect's mind already sketching the framework of a plan. What about federal jurisdiction? FBI would need solid evidence to launch an investigation. Right now, all we have is circumstantial connections and suspicious patterns. Not enough for a warrant. Then we build the case ourselves. Jesse studied him. Greg, these people think you're dead. That's your biggest advantage. You go after them directly, you lose that edge. I'm not talking about direct action. I'm talking about strategic pressure. We make them panic, make them sloppy, get them to expose themselves. That's dangerous. They tried to kill my son. Gregory's voice was steel. They've killed other people's children. They don't get to walk away from this. Jesse leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. You've changed. 6 months ago, you were an architect who designed community centers. Now you're planning to take down a trafficking ring. 6 months ago, I didn't know what I was capable of. Now I do. They spent the next 3 hours mapping out the operation. Charles's business structure, his finances, his personal life. Marla's role and connections. Morse's corruption. The adoptive families who'd unknowingly bought stolen children. Every piece of the puzzle laid out on the table between them. This is going to take time, Jesse warned. Months, maybe a year. I've got time. And I've got motivation. Gregory looked at his friend. Are you in? Jesse extended his hand. All the way. These bastards need to go down. They shook on it, sealing an alliance that would either bring justice to dozens of families or get them both killed. Gregory was betting on the former. He drove back to Richmond as the sun set, his mind already 3 steps ahead, building the trap that would destroy everyone who'd threatened Owen. The foundation was laid. Now came the careful, precise work of construction, not of buildings this time, but of an elaborate revenge that would bring Charles Sellers' entire world crashing down. Maurice Edwards had told him to be smart, to think ahead. Gregory planned to do exactly that. By the time Charles realized Gregory Decker was still alive, it would be far too late to stop what was coming. 8 months had passed since Gregory disappeared. He sat in his Richmond apartment late at night, walls covered with information, photographs, timelines, financial records, everything Jesse had compiled on Charles Sellers' operation. Owen, now going by Jason at school, slept in the next room, unaware of the web his father was weaving. The boy had adapted remarkably well to their new life, though Gregory caught him sometimes staring out windows with a sadness that broke his heart. No child should have to disappear, to lose everything familiar because his mother was a monster. Gregory's phone buzzed. Jesse's name appeared on the screen. "I've got something," his friend said without preamble. "A crack in the operation. Talk to me." Charles's previous partner, the one before he moved to Connecticut, guy named Raphael Elliott. He helped Charles run the same scheme in New Jersey 5 years ago. They had a falling out. Raphael disappeared. Officially, he moved to Florida. "But I found him. He's in witness protection." Gregory's pulse quickened. "He testified?" "He tried. Approached the FBI with evidence about Charles's operation. But Charles has connections. Someone tipped him off before the case got anywhere. Raphael barely got into protection alive. The case was buried. Charles relocated to Connecticut, started fresh. Does Raphael still have the evidence? Some of it. And he's willing to talk if we can guarantee his safety. He wants Charles to pay for what they did. This was exactly what Gregory needed. A witness with direct knowledge. Someone who could provide the foundation for a federal case. Set up a meeting. "I want to talk to him." 3 days later, Gregory met Raphael Elliott in a secure location Jesse had arranged, a hunting cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Raphael was in his 50s, with haunted eyes and the nervous manner of someone who'd been running for years. "You're the architect," Raphael said when they met. "The one whose wife was working with Charles. I heard about your accident. When Jesse reached out, I figured you'd faked it. Tell me everything," Gregory said. Over the next 4 hours, Raphael laid out the entire operation in detail. How Charles identified targets, families with valuable children and some vulnerability. How he cultivated relationships with people who could help. Real estate agents like Marla who had access to family information, police officers like Morse who could control investigations, lawyers who could expedite adoptions. "The children never know what happened," Raphael explained. "One day they have parents. Then there's an accident, a car crash, a house fire, a drowning. They go into the system, traumatized and confused. Charles's agency steps in, offers expedited private adoption to wealthy couples who've been on waiting lists for years. Everyone thinks they're helping a child who lost their parents to tragedy. But Charles caused the tragedies. Every single one. We targeted 26 families in New Jersey over 3 years. 26 children stolen from their parents. The parents died. The children were sold. And no one ever connected the dots because Charles was careful. Different methods, different locations, months between incidents." Gregory's voice was deadly calm. "Why did you work with him?" Raphael's face twisted with shame. "Money. At first, I convinced myself we were just facilitating adoptions, working around a broken system. By the time I realized what we were really doing, I was in too deep. Then I met one of the kids, a little girl named Sophie, 7 years old, crying for her mom who died in a car accident I'd helped arrange. That's when I couldn't do it anymore. So you went to the FBI and almost got killed for it. Charles has people everywhere, police, lawyers, even some federal agents. I got lucky that one honest FBI agent believed me and got me into protection. But without corroborating evidence, it was just my word against Charles's. The case died. That was 5 years ago. Charles has gotten more sophisticated since then. More victims, better infrastructure." Gregory pulled out his own files. "I have financial records showing suspicious payments from Morse to Charles. I have adoption records with timeline anomalies. I have encrypted communications between Charles and Marla. What I don't have is direct evidence of murder." Raphael nodded slowly. "That's always been the problem. Charles never does the killing himself. He contracts it out to people who owe him favors or need money. By the time investigators look at any individual incident, it appears to be exactly what it's supposed to be, a random tragedy. Then we need to make him do something that can't be explained away as random. We need to make him expose himself." Jesse, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. "You're talking about bait. I'm talking about creating a situation where Charles thinks he has another perfect opportunity, but we control all the variables. We document everything. We create an airtight chain of evidence, and we hand the FBI a case they can't ignore." Raphael leaned forward. You'd risk your life for this? I'm already dead, remember? And these people need to be stopped. Gregory looked between them. Are you both willing to help me finish this? Jesse nodded immediately. Raphael took longer, were clearly visible on his face, but finally he agreed. I've been hiding for 5 years. I want to stop hiding. They spent the rest of the night planning. Gregory would remain dead, but would start applying pressure to Charles's operation from the shadows. Anonymous tips to adoptive families, questions raised about suspicious deaths, subtle harassment that would make Charles paranoid and reactive. Meanwhile, Jesse would build a relationship with the FBI agent who'd helped Raphael, a woman named May Randolph who'd been promoted to the Bureau's Child Exploitation Task Force. If they could bring her solid evidence, she'd act on it. This is going to take months, Jesse warned. And it's going to be dangerous. Charles already killed you once. He won't hesitate to do it again if he discovers you're alive. Gregory thought about Owen sleeping safely in their Richmond apartment, about the other children who'd been stolen from their families, about the ones Charles was surely already targeting for his next operations. Then we'd better make sure he doesn't find out until it's too late. The plan unfolded slowly over the next 4 months, each piece placed with the precision Gregory normally applied to his architectural designs. He'd learned that revenge, like any complex structure, required a solid foundation and careful engineering. The first pressure point was the adoptive families. Gregory created an anonymous website called Sellers Family Services Truth and began posting carefully curated information, adoption timelines next to death certificates, financial analyses showing above-market fees, questions about the agency's vetting procedures. Nothing direct enough to trigger defamation lawsuits, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. Within weeks, 3 families contacted the site requesting more information. 2 ended up hiring private investigators to look into their adoptions. One family discovered their adopted daughter's parents had died in a house fire that investigators originally ruled accidental, but they found evidence suggesting arson that had been overlooked. Charles's agency received its first formal complaint. The Connecticut State Licensing Board opened an inquiry. He's panicking, Jesse reported during one of their weekly calls. I've got surveillance on his office. He's burning files, restructuring the company finances. He knows something's wrong, but can't figure out what. Good. Panicked people make mistakes. The second pressure point was Randolph Morse. Gregory used Raphael's information to identify other cases where Morse had covered up suspicious deaths. Then he anonymously sent those case files to the Connecticut State Police Internal Affairs Division and to an investigative journalist at the Hartford Courant. The journalist, a woman named Jenny Bullock who'd built her career on exposing corruption, took the bait. Her first article, Small Town Police Chief, Protector or Enabler, raised questions about Morse's handling of several accident investigations. The article didn't prove anything, but it attracted attention. The state police launched their own review of Morse's cases. The chief suddenly found himself under scrutiny for the first time in his career. Morse is isolating, Jesse reported. He stopped communicating with Charles through normal channels. They're both paranoid about phones and emails now. That means they'll have to meet in person to coordinate. Can you track them? Already on it. The third pressure point was Marla. This one was personal, and Gregory had to be careful not to let emotion override strategy. Through a series of anonymous messages, he made her believe Charles was planning to betray her, that he'd been skimming money from their joint accounts, that he was considering eliminating her as a liability. It was all technically true. Gregory had hacked into Charles's offshore accounts and found exactly that. Charles had been moving money without Marla's knowledge, and his encrypted notes included phrases like "am becoming a problem" and "clean break necessary." Marla, who'd helped murder other families without apparent remorse, proved remarkably easy to panic when she thought she might be a target. She hired her own lawyer, started moving assets into accounts Charles couldn't access, and began collecting insurance policies on his life. They're turning on each other, Gregory told Owen one evening. They were in their small apartment, Owen doing homework while Gregory worked on his laptop. The boy was now 10, taller and more serious than he'd been a year ago. "Dad, when will it be over?" Owen asked quietly. Gregory looked at his son, this brave, resilient child who'd lost everything and never complained. "Soon. I promise. Will we ever stop running?" The question pierced Gregory's heart. "Yes. When the people who tried to hurt us are in prison, we'll be able to stop." We might not be able to go back to being Gregory and Owen Decker, but we'll be safe. That's what matters. Owen nodded, accepting this with the matter-of-fact wisdom he'd developed. I miss Maurice. Can we visit him someday? Absolutely. In fact, Gregory made a decision. Let's call him right now. He'd stayed in a regular contact with Maurice through secure channels. The old cobbler had closed his shop and moved to North Carolina to be closer to them, though they'd never met in person since that day in the repair shop. Now Gregory dialed, and Maurice's familiar voice brought comfort to them both. How's my favorite troublemaker? Maurice asked when Owen got on the phone. They talked for 20 minutes, Owen's face lighting up as he described school and his new friends. When Gregory took the phone back, Maurice's tone shifted. How close are you to finishing this? Closer every day? Their operation is crumbling. The state police are investigating Morse. Charles's adoption agency is under review, and Marla's terrified Charles is going to kill her. And when it all falls apart, I'll make sure the FBI is there to catch the pieces. Raphael's ready to testify. We've got financial evidence, and we're documenting everything. When Charles and Marla make their next move, we'll have cameras on them. Be careful, son. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. I know, but this needs to end. The final pressure came 2 weeks later when Gregory orchestrated his masterstroke. Using Raphael's knowledge of Charles's methods, he created a perfect target, a fictional family called the Gentrys. Jackie Gentry, supposedly a widowed father with a 9-year-old daughter, had just moved to Connecticut for a new job. He was wealthy, isolated, and his daughter Madison was exactly the type Charles usually targeted. Jesse created the digital footprint, social media profiles, school enrollment records, even a rental agreement for a house in Charles's territory. Then Gregory had Marla's real estate agency help this family find a home, ensuring she'd be the one to pass the information to Charles. The bait was set. Now they waited to see if Charles would bite. He did. Within a week, Jesse's surveillance caught Charles conducting background research on the Gentry family. 2 weeks later, Marla and Charles met in person at a remote location, a hunting cabin Charles owned outside town. Jesse had placed cameras and microphones in the cabin days earlier. The recording they captured was devastating. This Gentry situation is perfect, Charles said on the tape. Single father, no extended family, just bought a house with a bad electrical system. We stage a fire, make sure he's inside. The daughter's valuable, blonde, pretty, smart. I've got buyers lined up. What about the heat we're taking? Marla asked. The website, the state investigation. That's why we need to move fast. One more job, big payout. Then we shut down for a year and relocate. I'm thinking Georgia or the Carolinas. And us. A pause. Then Charles's voice, cold. We'll discuss our arrangement after this job is complete. Even on the recording, Marla's fear was palpable. She knew Charles was planning to eliminate her. Gregory listened to the tape with grim satisfaction. They had Charles on record planning murder and child trafficking. They had financial evidence. They had Raphael's testimony. And they had FBI agent May Randolph ready to move. It's time, he told Jesse. Contact Agent Randolph. Tell her we're ready to hand over everything. The meeting with May Randolph happened 3 days later at a safe house in Maryland. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, with the bearing of someone who'd seen too much evil and refused to become numb to it. Gregory laid out the entire case. Raphael's testimony about the New Jersey operations, the Connecticut victims, the financial trails, the recordings, the surveillance footage. Everything documented, organized, irrefutable. May reviewed it all in silence, her expression growing harder with each new piece of evidence. Finally, she looked up. This is solid work. Very solid. But I need to know, who the hell are you really? Jesse says you're the architect whose wife was involved. The one who supposedly died in a car accident last year. Gregory met her eyes. I'm a father who was almost murdered along with his son. I faked my death to keep us alive, and I've spent the last year building this case because Charles Sellers needs to be stopped. You understand this means you'll have to testify. You'll have to reveal you're alive. I know. Your wife will be arrested. Your son will have to deal with that trauma. My son almost had no father at all. He'll deal with this. Gregory's voice hardened. And that woman stopped being my wife the moment she agreed to sell our child. May studied him for a long moment. All right, I'll take this to my task force. If everything checks out, and I believe it will, we'll move on this within 2 weeks. Federal warrants for Charles Sellers, Marla Decker, Randolph Morse, and several associates. We'll coordinate with Connecticut State Police to take down the whole network at once. What about the children? The ones who were stolen? We'll work with family services to investigate each adoption. If we can prove coercion or fraud, we'll work to reunite children with surviving family members. It won't be perfect. Some of these kids have been with their adoptive families for years. But we'll do everything we can to make it right. Gregory nodded. It wasn't perfect, Justice, but it was the best outcome possible. As he drove back to Richmond, Gregory felt the weight of the past year lifting slightly. The trap was built. The evidence was delivered. Now it was just a matter of watching it spring shut. He arrived home to find Owen waiting up for him, despite the late hour. Is it over? His son asked. Almost. The FBI is going to arrest them soon. Within a couple of weeks. Owen's expression was complex, relief, anxiety, and something that might have been grief. Despite everything Marla had done, she was still his mother in some way, still part of his history. What happens to us after? We'll have to testify at the trial. We'll have to tell our story publicly. But then, Gregory pulled his son into a hug. Then we get to decide who we want to be. We don't have to be Martin and Jason Daly anymore. We can be Gregory and Owen again, or we can choose entirely new names. We can live wherever we want. We'll be free. Owen held on tight. I want to be Owen again. I miss being Owen. Then Owen you'll be. That night, Gregory lay awake thinking about the approaching endgame. Charles, Marla, and Morse had no idea the walls were closing in. They thought themselves untouchable, protected by their careful planning and corruption. They'd underestimated the father whose murder they'd plotted, never imagining he'd survive and come back to destroy them. Maurice had told him to be smart, to think ahead. Gregory had done exactly that. Now, finally, justice was within reach. 2 weeks later, he got the call from May Randolph. It's happening tomorrow. Federal agents and state police will execute simultaneous warrants at 6 a.m. Charles Sellers, Marla Decker, and Randolph Morse will all be in custody by 7. We're also bringing in 3 associates who help facilitate the adoptions. This is going to be a major operation. I want to be there. A pause. Gregory, that's not advisable. I've been dead for over a year. I've built this case from nothing. I want to see them arrested. His voice carried steel. I've earned that much. May sighed. All right, but you stay in the surveillance van with me. You watch on monitors. Agreed. Agreed. The next morning, Gregory sat in an FBI surveillance van 2 blocks from Charles Sellers' house, watching multiple camera feeds as federal agents surrounded the property. May sat beside him, coordinating with the teams through her headset. At exactly 6 a.m., agents breached the front door. The feed showed Charles stumbling out of his bedroom in pajamas, his face going white as agents swarmed through his house. He tried to run for the back door, but agents were already there. Charles Sellers, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, child trafficking, wire fraud, and racketeering. Watching him be handcuffed, dragged out of his house in front of his neighbors, Gregory felt cold satisfaction. This was the man who'd planned to drown him and sell Owen. Now he'd spend the rest of his life in prison. The second feed showed Randolph Morse's arrest at his home. The police chief went for his gun, but federal agents subdued him quickly. He screamed about his rights, about corruption, about being set up, all while cameras recorded every word. The third feed was Marla. Gregory's hand clenched as he watched agents knock on the door of her condo, the place she'd moved to after his death, already spending insurance money he'd never know she'd collected. She answered in a silk robe, her face still perfect with sleep. Marla Decker, you're under arrest. What? No, there's been a mistake. For conspiracy to commit murder, child trafficking, and fraud. Her face crumbled. No, this can't be happening. Charles promised. Charles Sellers is already in custody. You have the right to remain silent. Watching her be handcuffed, watching her cry and protest and beg, Gregory felt nothing but ice-cold vindication. This was the woman who'd shared his bed, who'd borne his child, who'd smiled at him while planning his murder. She deserved every second of what was coming. All targets in custody, May said into her headset. Then she looked at Gregory. How do you feel? Like I can finally breathe. The arrests made national news by noon. Major child trafficking ring bust in Connecticut screamed the headlines. The details were horrifying, a decade-long operation, dozens of children stolen, families destroyed. Charles Sellers became the face of evil, his picture plastered across every news channel. The story exploded when reporters discovered that Gregory Decker, supposedly dead for over a year, was actually alive and had built the entire case against the trafficking ring. His resurrection became a national sensation. Owen watched the news with Gregory that evening, sitting close on their couch as reporters discussed the case. "Dad, they're calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a father who protected his son." "That's what heroes do, though." Gregory pulled Owen close. "Then I guess we're both heroes, because you were so brave through all of this." The trials took 8 months to complete. Gregory testified for 3 days, describing how he discovered the plot against him and Owen, how he built the case, how he documented everything. He never raised his voice, never showed emotion, just laid out the facts in precise detail. Raphael Elliott testified for 2 days, describing the New Jersey operations in devastating detail. His testimony was corroborated by documents Gregory and Jesse had collected. Jesse presented the surveillance evidence, the financial records, the adoption timeline analysis. Every piece fit together perfectly, an architectural blueprint of a criminal enterprise. The adoptive families testified about the questionable circumstances of their adoptions, many in tears as they realized they'd been deceived. Several families voluntarily gave up the children, wanting to do the right thing even though it broke their hearts. Marla's defense tried to paint her as a victim of Charles's manipulation, but the recordings destroyed that narrative. The jury heard her voice discussing Gregory's accident with casual cruelty, heard her negotiating prices for children, heard her helping identify new targets. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. Charles's trial was even more damning. The evidence was overwhelming, the witnesses credible, the pattern undeniable. He received life in prison without possibility of parole. Randolph Morse tried to cooperate, offering testimony against Charles in exchange for a reduced sentence. He got 25 years instead of life. Marla received 35 years. The judge's words at sentencing were scathing. "You betrayed every trust society holds sacred. You betrayed your husband, your son, and the fundamental bonds of human decency. You deserve every single day of the sentence I'm imposing." Gregory attended every sentencing hearing. He wanted to look each of them in the eye as justice was served. When Marla's turn came, she looked directly at him from the defendant's table, tears streaming down her face. "Gregory, please. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly. Charles manipulated me." "You planned to sell our son," Gregory said quietly. "You were going to kill me and sell Owen like livestock. There's no apology that makes that forgivable." She sobbed harder, but he felt no pity. Some betrayals were too fundamental to forgive. After the final sentencing, May Randolph found Gregory in the courthouse hallway. "It's over," she said. "They're all going to prison for a very long time. And we're still working to help the families affected. We've reunited 3 children with surviving relatives, and we're investigating 12 more cases. Thank you for believing in the case. Thank you for building it. This was your work, Gregory. You got justice for your son and for a lot of other families." She paused. "What will you do now?" "Live. Finally just live." 6 months after the trials ended, Gregory and Owen moved to a small coastal town in North Carolina. They used their real names again, Gregory and Owen Decker, no longer in hiding. Maurice Edwards lived 15 minutes away in a little house near the beach. Gregory opened his own architecture firm, specializing in community buildings and affordable housing. Word spread about the architect who'd brought down a trafficking ring, and clients sought him out, not for celebrity, but because they trusted someone who'd fought that hard for his child. Owen thrived. He was 11 now, still processing everything that had happened, seeing a therapist twice a week to work through the trauma. But he smiled more often, made friends easily, and talked about what he wanted to be when he grew up. On a Saturday afternoon, Gregory and Owen walked on the beach with Maurice. The old man had slowed down in the past year, but his eyes were still sharp, still kind. "You did good, son," Maurice said, watching Owen run ahead to chase seagulls. "You saved that boy, and you saved a lot of other children too." "I couldn't have done it without you," Gregory replied. "If you hadn't warned me that day, I did what anyone should have done. You did the hard part. You built the case, you saw it through, you never gave up." They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Owen ran back, breathless and grinning. Dad, look what I found. He held up a perfect sand dollar, intact and beautiful. That's lucky, Gregory said. Know what sand dollars represent? What? New beginnings. Fresh starts. Owen studied the sand dollar, then looked up at his father. I like our fresh start. Me too, buddy. Me too. That evening, back at their house, Gregory stood on the porch watching the sunset. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the terror of that day in Morris's shop, the desperate flight, the year of careful planning, the satisfaction of watching justice served. His phone rang. Jesse's name appeared. Hey, Martin. Or should I say Gregory? Gregory works fine now. Good. Listen, I'm working a case that's similar to what we did with Sellers. Different network, different state, but the same playbook. There's a father whose wife disappeared with their daughter, and he thinks something criminal is going on but can't prove it. I thought of you. Gregory felt a familiar fire kindle in his chest. You're asking if I want to help? I'm asking if you want to build another case. Use what you learned. Help another family the way Maurice helped you. Gregory looked through the window at Owen, safe and happy, doing homework at the kitchen table. His son would always be his first priority, but maybe there was room to help others too. Maybe that's what he was meant to do. Use his skills, his experience, his understanding of how to dismantle criminal enterprises. Tell me about the case, Gregory said. As Jesse outlined the details, Gregory grabbed a notepad and started sketching, not buildings this time, but the framework of an investigation. The foundation of another trap, carefully designed to bring down another monster. He'd spent his career building structures that sheltered people, that served communities, that lasted. Now he'd found a new kind of architecture, building cases that protected the vulnerable and brought justice to those who thought themselves untouchable. It was dangerous work. It would take time away from Owen, but it was necessary, and Gregory had proven he was very good at it. I'm in, he told Jesse. Let's bring these people down. After hanging up, Gregory stepped back inside. Owen looked up from his homework. Everything okay, Dad? Everything's perfect. I was just thinking about the future. What about it? Gregory sat down beside his son. I was thinking that we've been given a second chance at life. We should use it to help people who haven't been as lucky as us. Owen considered this with his serious, thoughtful expression. Like Mr. Maurice helped us? Exactly like that. Then we should definitely do it. Gregory hugged his son, grateful beyond words for this brave, kind child who'd survived so much and remained so good. They'd been through hell together, but they'd come out stronger, wiser, and ready to make a difference. Outside, the last light faded from the sky. In Connecticut, Charles Sellers, Marla Decker, and Randolph Moore sat in their prison cells, paying for their crimes. Their victims were healing, finding new lives, getting the help they needed. And in North Carolina, a father and son planned their future, one built not on revenge anymore, but on justice, on helping others, on making sure that what happened to them wouldn't happen to anyone else. Gregory Decker had died on a bridge over the Delaware River 14 months ago, but he'd been reborn as something stronger, a protector, a builder of cases instead of buildings, a man who understood that sometimes the best architecture was the careful construction of justice. It was a good new life. It was the life they'd earned, and it was only just beginning. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.